Today, we are opening up a stack of notes on a book that operates almost like a piece of spiritual software code. It's designed to, well, hack your heart.
That is a surprisingly technical way to describe a novel about medieval poetry, but honestly, it fits.
It does, right.
We're looking at Elif Shafak's global bestseller, The 40 Rules of Love.
And to be clear to everyone listening, this isn't just a book review. We aren't here to, critique the prose style or the adjectives.
No, not at all.
We're here to extract the operating system underneath the story. Because looking at the source material, this book it's structurally unique. It's a dual narrative, right? We're straddling two very different worlds here.
We are, and that structure is, I think, the first big takeaway. On one track, you have a contemporary story, nearly present-day Massachusetts.
Right.
Think suburbs, shiny kitchens, existential dread.
Yeah.
And on the other track, you are thrown back into the 13th century, into a world of dusty roads, wandering dervishes, and rigid religious dogma in the city of Konya.
So the 1200s track follows two absolute heavyweights of history. The famous poet Rumi and his mentor, the wandering mystic Shams Tabrizi.
Right. And the modern track follows a woman named Ella Rubinstein.
Okay.
And the mission for this deep dive is to see how these two timelines, separated by 800 years, collide.
Yeah.
We're going to explore the definition of ishkor, or divine love, the difference between religion and spirituality, and the terrifying courage it takes to actually change your life when you're comfortable.
I want to double-click on that word comfortable, because that seems to be the starting point for our modern protagonist, Ella.
It really is.
If we look at the first block of chapters, say, chapters 1 through 10, Ella Rubinstein seems to have won the game of life.
On paper. Absolutely. She's 40 years old. She has a large, beautiful Victorian house in Northampton.
That's pretty good.
She has 3 teenage children, a husband who is a successful, reliable dentist. The source material describes her life as a still pond. No ripples, no storms.
But we know that in literature, and honestly in life, a still pond is usually just stagnation in disguise.
Exactly. If you peel back that layer of domestic perfection, the notes describe a profound, echoing silence in her life. She isn't happy, but she isn't devastated either. She's just numb.
The term the author uses is a soulless marriage. That stuck out to me in the reading. It's not that her husband is beating her. It's not that they are screaming at each other every night. It's that they become roommates who share a mortgage and a history.
And that is often harder to escape than a volatile relationship. Inertia is the most powerful force in the universe.
Yeah.
Ella has convinced herself that this numbness is actually maturity. She tells herself that passion is for teenagers and soap operas, and that real marriage is about duty and stability.
It's a defense mechanism. She's protecting herself.
It's a fortress. She has built a wall of comfort around herself to keep out the possibility of being hurt. But the problem with walls is that they don't just keep pain out, they keep life out.
So Ella's sleepwalking through her suburban life, but then we get the inciting incident. This happens in the block of chapters from 11 to 20. Ella gets a job.
Well, a literary assignment. She gets hired by a literary agency to read a manuscript and write a report on it.
And the manuscript she receives isn't just a random thriller. It's called Sweet Blasphemy.
Great title.
It is.
Yeah.
And this manuscript is the story within the story. It is a historical novel about Rumi and Shams. So picture this. Ella is sitting in her immaculate, lonely kitchen in Massachusetts making coffee, and she starts reading about a dirty, wandering dervish in the 1200s.
And this is where the mirror effect kicks in. As she reads about these radical spiritual concepts in the manuscript, she can't help but contrast them with her own existence.
Right.
The book acts as a catalyst. It starts cracking that wall she built.
Before we talk about how she cracks, we need to understand what she's reading. We need to go to that second timeline. Let's time travel back to the 13th century.
Let's do it.
We're introduced to Shams Tabrizi, and calling him a character feels like too small a word. In the notes, he comes across as a force of nature.
He is the anti-Ella.
How so?
Ella is all about security, reputation, possessions, and fitting in. Shams is a wandering dervish. He owns nothing. He has no home. He has no reputation to protect. In fact, he often deliberately ruins his reputation just to keep his ego in check.
He is a disruptor.
He is a spiritual anarchist.
Yeah.
The text mentions a specific prayer he offers to God. He isn't asking for food or shelter. He asks for a companion. He says, "Give me someone who can bear my truth."
Bear my truth. That implies his truth is heavy.
It is incredibly heavy. Shams sees the world through the lens of radical, unified love. And in a world governed by strict religious hierarchies and social rules, that kind of love is dangerous.
Okay.
He needs an equal to share it with.
which leads him to Konya and to Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi. Now, I think most people listening know Rumi as the guy whose quotes end up on Instagram background.
Oh, for sure.
You know, stop acting so small, you are the universe in ecstatic motion, that kind of thing.
Right. But the source material is very clear. That is not who Rumi was at the beginning of this story.
Paint the picture for us. Who was Rumi before Shams showed up?
He was the establishment. He was a highly orthodox, highly respected religious scholar. He was an intellectual. He preached to crowds. He had students who hung on his every word. And he followed the rules, both social and religious, to the letter.
So he was basically an Ivy League professor mixed with a bishop.
That is a perfect analogy. He was successful, wealthy, and respected, just like Ella.
Right.
And just like Ella, he was spiritually asleep. He knew about God, but he didn't know God.
He had the map, but he had never taken the journey.
Exactly. And then Shams walks into town.
And lights a match.
This
is covered in chapters 41 through 50. The meeting of these two men. It's not a gentle introduction, is it?
No. Shams challenges him publicly. He asks Rumi questions that logic can't answer. There's a famous scene referenced where Shams throws Rumi's precious books into the water.
Wait, literally, he throws his library in the water.
Metaphorically, in some versions, literally in others, but the point remains the same. He is telling Rumi, you cannot find what you are looking for in these books. You have to find it in your heart.
Wow.
He moves Rumi from being a scholar to being an ashika haq, a lover of truth.
That distinction is key, from the head to the heart.
It is the difference between reading a menu and eating the meal. Rumi had memorized the menu. Shams forced him to eat.
This transition brings us to the core philosophy of the book. It is called the 40 Rules of Love for a reason. As Shams teaches Rumi, he articulates these rules. And I want to dig into these because they aren't just be nice to people. They seem pretty radical.
They are rigorous. These are spiritual axioms.
Let's unpack a few that stood out in our notes.
One of the most critical ones is about the nature of God. Shams says, how we see God is a direct reflection of how we see ourselves.
Okay.
If God brings to mind mostly fear and blame, it means there is too much fear and blame welled up inside us. If we see God as full of love and compassion, so are we.
That is basically psychological projection.
Precisely. It turns theology into psychology. He's saying that your spiritual worldview is just a mirror. If you think the universe is a hostile place, it's because you are holding on to hostility.
That is a tough pill to swallow. It takes the blame off the world and puts it squarely on you.
That is why Shams is so unpopular with the religious authorities in the book. He takes away their power. He says, you don't need a middleman, you need a clean mirror.
Another rule that hit me was, the path to the truth is a labor of the heart, not of the head. Make your heart your primary guide, not your mind.
This is the one that really messed up with Ella back in the modern timeline.
Right. Let's cut back to her. She's reading these rules in her kitchen, and she isn't just highlighting them. She starts emailing the author of the manuscript, a man named Aziz Zahara.
This correspondence, which happens in chapters 21 through 30, is the modern parallel to the Rumi-Shams connection.
So Ella is Rumi.
Ella is Rumi. Aziz is Shams.
But Aziz isn't a homeless dervish. He's a photographer, right?
He is. But he embodies the philosophy. He lives a nomadic life. He embraces uncertainty. He travels the world. And through their emails, he starts challenging Ella, just like Shams challenged Rumi.
He calls her out on her safety.
He does. And Ella finds herself opening up to the stranger in a way she hasn't opened up to her husband in 20 years. The text says she feels she is finally becoming alive.
But being alive is risky.
It is incredibly risky, and this is a nuance the book captures well. When you start listening to your heart after ignoring it for decades, it doesn't feel like a warm, fuzzy blanket. It feels like a panic attack.
Because you realize everything you have built is false.
Exactly. If the rules are true, if love is the only thing that matters, if security is an illusion, then Ella's entire life is a lie. Her marriage, her routines, her social standing, it's all theater.
And she has to face that.
She does.
This brings us to the inevitable conflict. Because you can't just blow up your worldview without shrapnel hitting the people around you.
No. Transformation always has a cost. And in the historical timeline, the cost is massive.
In chapters 61 through 70, we see Rumi's life falling apart. He stops giving his lectures. He ignores his family.
Right.
He spends days locked in a room with Shams, just staring into each other's eyes and talking.
It's a spiritual communion called Sobet, But to the outside world, it looked like madness. Or worse, it looked scandalous.
The community must have been furious.
They felt betrayed. Rumi belonged to them. He was their leader, their symbol, and this beggar, Shams, stole him. The notes describe a rising tide of jealousy and hatred. They viewed Shams as a heretic.
It's interesting how quickly love turns to hate when people feel their status quo is threatened.
That is a central theme. The rules of love threaten the rules of society. Society runs on order, hierarchy, and predictability. Love, in the Sufi sense, is chaotic, egalitarian, and wild.
They're incompatible operating systems.
Completely. So the system attacks the virus. The hatred evolves into a conspiracy. And this leads to the climax in chapters 71 through 80. Shams Tabrizi disappears.
And the source material leans into the historical ambiguity here.
Yeah.
Did he leave? Was he murdered?
The book suggests a darker turn, that Rumi's own son was involved in eliminating Shams.
So Rumi, the man of love, loses the love of his life to violence.
He's devastated. He's shattered.
Now, a normal person might break here. They might become bitter, or they might just go back to their old job and try to forget. But Rumi doesn't either.
This is the pivot point of history. This is where Rumi becomes Rumi. The expert view here, and the book's argument, is that the grief itself was the final teacher.
The wound is the place where the light enters you. That is one of his most famous lines.
Exactly. Shams had to leave so Rumi could find the Shams inside himself.
Explain that a bit more. How does grief turn into enlightenment?
As long as Shams was there physically, Rumi was dependent on him. He was the student. Shams was the son. When Shams was gone, the longing, the fire of separation, burned away the last remnants of Rumi's ego. He began to whirl.
The sama, the dance.
Right. The whirling dervishes. It wasn't a performance. It was Rumi physically expressing his grief and his search for the divine. He was spinning to find the center where he and the beloved were one.
So the poetry we have today, the Masnavi, the Divan, it all poured out of this wound.
Yes. It was an eruption of grief that transmuted into universal love. He reached a state of marifat gnosis. He realized that the love he felt for Shams was actually just a reflection of his love for God.
That is incredibly heavy. But it validates one of the rules. There is no birth of consciousness without pain.
Precisely. You cannot be polished without friction. You cannot bake bread without fire.
Okay, so Rumi finds his resolution through poetry and the divine. He transcends the pain. But what about Ella? She's not a 13th century mystic. She's a mom in Massachusetts.
And that is why her story hits harder for many readers. She doesn't have the safety net of history.
In the final chapters, the manuscript ends. She knows how the story finishes, and she's still emailing Aziz.
And Aziz tells her he's coming to Boston to meet her. But there's a catch.
There is always a catch?
Aziz reveals he is dying. He has cancer. He doesn't have much time left.
Oh. So if she leaves her husband to be with him, she isn't leaving for a happily ever after. She is leaving for a funeral.
She is leaving a safe, long, boring life for a brief, painful, intense moment of love.
That changes the calculus completely. It isn't choose the better man. It is choose uncertainty and pain over safety and numbness.
And this is where Ella makes her stand. She reviews her life. She looks at the soulless duty she has performed for 20 years, and she realizes she cannot unknow what she has learned.
The text says she packs her bags.
She does. She leaves her husband. She leaves the house. She goes to meet Aziz.
Talk about burning the boats.
It is a massive move. It mirrors Rumi stepping down from the podium. She dismantles her identity as the perfect wife and good mother to be, for a brief time, a lover.
And shortly after, Aziz dies.
He does. Ella is left alone.
But, and this is the crucial part, is she unhappy?
No. And that is the ending note. She is grieving, yes. She is alone, yes. But she is no longer empty. She has broken silence. She has experienced the 40 rules in real time. She is awake.
So as we pull back and look at this entire deep dive, what are we really looking at? If we synthesize these two stories, what is the message Shafak is trying to inject into our brains?
I think there are 3 pillars here that go beyond just a nice story.
Get me.
Pillar 1. Love is a refinery. We often think of love as comfort, a soft place to land. This book argues that true love is a blast furnace. It exists to burn away your ego, your pretensions, and your false securities. If it doesn't change you, it isn't ishq.
So if you are comfortable, you aren't doing it right.
In this context, yes. Pillar 2. The universalism of the spirit. The book goes to great lengths to show that a Muslim scholar in the 1200s and a Jewish housewife in the 2000s are facing the exact same problem.
The human condition hasn't changed.
Not one bit. We just have better Wi-Fi and antidepressants. The hole in the soul is the same shape.
And the third pillar?
The necessity of pain. This is the hardest one. We live in a culture that is obsessed with avoiding pain. We numb it, we medicate it, we distract ourselves from it.
We doom scroll to avoid it.
Exactly. But the source material argues that pain is the vehicle for transformation. Rumi needed the grief of losing Shams to become Rumi. Ellen needed the pain of blowing up her marriage to find herself. You cannot grow while staying entirely safe.
It reminds me of that idea that a seed has to completely destroy itself to become a flower. It's a violent process.
It is, and that leads to a provocative thought for everyone listening.
Lay it on us.
We all say we want deep connection. We say we want to find our purpose or spiritual enlightenment. We put it on our vision board.
Yep.
But if we look at Rumi and Ella, gaining those things required the total destruction of their current lives. It required alienation, loss, and terrifying uncertainty.
Right.
So the question is, are we actually brave enough to want that? Or do we just want the aesthetic of depth without the cost? Do we want the enlightenment, or do we just want the yoga pants?
Wow. That is the question the 40 Rules of Love leaves you with.
It is, and it's a question worth sitting with.
That is a fantastic and slightly uncomfortable place to leave it. Thank you for walking us through this journey.
My pleasure.
And to our listeners, thanks for diving deep with us. Maybe take a look at your own still pond today and see if it is time to throw a rock in it. We'll see you next time.